Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome. Sorry about the traffic. It's been so bad around GR.
Horrible.
I'm thankful that I don't have to take 131.
Too many people.
I was at Brandywine at breakfast, and I should have just taken 3 Mile across. And instead, I tried to go down the Beltline. So,
I was in the parking lot on the Beltline. Too many people live here.
Yeah.
And I don't like people, so we need to go to another town.
So
not true.
That's why we moved to Grand Rapids, because there wasn't a lot of people.
That's correct. That's correct.
I don't know how you get much smaller. I mean, coming from Chicago, I was just there.
No, it's so true. When we moved here, we were like 15 minutes early everywhere we went, because you're so used to leaving with this huge time. But now, that was like 16 years ago, right? But now it's like Chicago.
Yeah.
Did you live
It's
downtown
like Chicago.
when you were at Moody?
Part of the time. We lived several places. We were running from the law there, so we kept moving.
But what was your normal commute? How long?
Well, we started way out in Wheaton in the suburbs.
Oh, wow.
And because our kids were in schools were good out there. But I had to leave at 5:15 in the morning. It's an hour drive. And if I left after 5:15 in the morning, exponentially, it just ramped up. So
You took the train some.
yeah, I took the train once in a while. Then when our kids were out of school, we moved downtown, which we liked. Chicago,
fun.
back then, Chicago was a great place to live. It's a little tougher now. I don't think I'd want to live downtown now. But anyway, it was cool. We loved our time in Chicago, Tryg. It was, serving the Lord at Moody was a wonderful experience. And so I look in the rearview mirror and I see, a lot of when you look in the rearview mirror in your life, you can see how God orchestrated it all, right? And you're going, wow. Looking at the windshield, it's a little foggy, usually like where we're headed, right? But you look back and see the sovereign hand of God in your life, and looking back, I have a lot to be thankful for.
There's a cool Jewish metaphor that follows along that, and that is that they say, because, the Jewish concept of remembering is to look at the past and bring the realities of the past into the present to have it affect your future. And so the picture that they use for that is a rowboat, because you know how you row a boat backwards?
Yeah, you're looking.
So you're constantly looking back, and that should be the posture of your life, that you're looking back at the faithfulness of God, and that should be what's propelling you forward.
Yeah, right. Because if he was faithful, then he'll be faithful.
Right.
Even though you're rowing into the whitewater.
Joe.
Right?
Exactly.
Sometimes you're rowing.
Just keep it a little closer right here. Is that okay?
It's okay.
You too, Tony.
It's okay.
Okay.
We want to hear the beautiful things that you have to say.
Well, we should
But
introduce
sometimes-
everybody.
Yeah, no, we will. We
Okay.
kind of jumped into the conversation,
I know.
obviously.
I'll
Doctor.
scoot up here.
Are we still in or not?
Yeah, no, we're in.
Okay, good.
See, this is part
That's
of
the beauty of a podcast.
The beauty of a podcast is that
What is a podcast? No, I'm just kidding.
well, you called it when
No.
you texted me yesterday. It's funny. It's like I can't wait to be on the blog tomorrow.
Blog.
Is it a vlog?
Yeah.
No, blog.
I know.
Yeah, I'm like,
You were taking me down earlier for not being so old. I wasn't tech, but I'm just proving the point, right? Like, but you interrupted my profound thought. Because when you're rowing, you're looking backwards, you're rowing forward. Sometimes you're rowing into the whitewater,
Yep.
right? And to the rapids. And
Yep.
that's when you need to have that. He's been faithful. He'll still be faithful.
Amen.
yeah,
Was I close enough to the mic?
yes, that was great.
You guys are hard. Wow. It's going to be a long blog.
Well, the reason I interrupted you is because we don't want to assume. We have with us today Dr. Joe Stowell.
Yep.
Joe is the right way to say that.
Joe.
You did work hard. I like to be able to at least give you a little kudos. I love that you're humble.
No, I mean, like, I'm Joe. My mother called me that for years.
I love it. And then Tony Schmid. Tony,
Hey there.
how are you connected to Crossroads?
We're
Yes, Tony.
yes.
Morning, Tony.
Morning. Thanks for having me first. This is great. We've been a member at Crossroads for 6 years, and my wife Jen works on staff at Crossroads.
What's Jen do?
She works on the community life team. I don't really know what her role is. Like her
She has.
actual
It's
title.
kind of literally a joke. It's not a joke because she does great job and she does important work.
Yeah.
But the title thing at Crossroads is kind of like, what is your title exactly? I think she's director of
I mean, look.
house churches, small groups.
Crack filler.
And she always
Can you
says
say
that. She
crack
goes,
filler?
guys, I don't know what my title is.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of the thing. Like, what? And then Brian is her direct boss,
Yep.
Brian Medallion. He's always like, let me go look on my computer.
Well, if you don't give somebody a title, you can use them and you can abuse them, kind of like
Yeah.
tell them to do anything
Jack of all
you need
trades,
to be done, right?
catch all.
Community Groups Associate Director.
There you
Nice.
go. And she, I mean,
Nice.
she is not about titles.
You
So
know.
she just wants to do great work that's impactful. So for her, it's like whatever's asked, if it's making a big impact,
She
then
is.
she's.
I mean, to be honest, she is like that. She's one of my favorite people on staff. Jen is amazing.
And out of curiosity, Tony, what do you do to bring home the bacon?
I am the CFO for RCA, not the electronics company, but Reforming Churches.
We were
in
talking
America.
about it earlier.
Yeah, right.
For like 5 minutes, and then
Yeah, so
Joe said,
yeah.
"Oh, not RCA."
No, Tony's telling me the CFO of RCA. I'm thinking the global company in my head. RCA, wow, we're sitting with the band, like, how can this be?
I'll use that more often.
And why is he in Grand Rapids?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
on
right.
this podcast, on this
Because I
vlog.
did ask you, I said, well, is the national headquarters of RCA in Grand
I'm like,
Rapids? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I just went along with it.
Do you have joy in your heart today, Tony?
I do. Yeah,
That's good.
Yeah, I do have joy in my heart. I try to wake up with joy every day. We just got a puppy 2 weeks ago, so
Why don't you name your puppy Joy?
yeah.
Then you could wake up with joy every day.
Ironically, we named our puppy Blue. But
Literally the opposite.
Yeah, I know. The opposite of joy.
Well, is it for Michigan?
yes. Well,
yes.
it's
I have
kind
another
of
friend
like
who has a dog named Blue.
yeah. It's we
Yikes.
have 3 kids, so our oldest Max wants to play football at Michigan. So Blue, and we have 2 younger ones, an 8 and a 5-year-old. They love Bluey, the show Bluey,
Oh, okay.
and everybody wins. I feel like in this scenario.
That's
So,
another thing we should say about Jen. She is a diehard Lions
She
fan,
loves
which
the
is also
Lions.
Blue.
Yes.
So she is diehard
Loves the
Lions.
Lions.
She wears Lions earrings, like dangly Lions earrings
Yeah.
at work.
Not
Yeah.
often. Not
Only
often.
when there's a game. But
Yeah.
yeah, she loves
But
the Lions.
Libby, are you a Chicago sports fan then? I don't
I'm
know if I've
actually
ever
not.
asked you.
The rest of my family are pretty big Cubs
Cubs,
fans.
yes.
Oh yeah,
Ooh.
big time.
But I'm not. So I was raised on the east side of the state from like 3rd grade to 10th grade. So I kind of became a Tigers fan.
Sorry, that's a sad way to live your life, bro. Seriously.
You know me, Dad. I'm very loyal. So I'm a
Yes.
Tigers fan, and I'm a Michigan fan, and I'm a Lions fan. So
And I married a Buckeye. So you can imagine what goes on in our
Tragic.
family. Yeah, we have to fly under the radar a little bit.
they have to
house
dampen their
divided.
Yeah.
enthusiasm.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Jen's a big Lions fan. I'm not so much. So I grew up in Indianapolis, so I don't.
So are you IU?
I don't really have like an affiliate to a
Okay.
college team,
Yeah. Okay.
but
Well,
I should. It's not Ohio State,
Good.
and it's not Michigan State. So I guess
That's all that
by
matters.
default it's Michigan. But I feel like I've been forced into that.
Let's make a
So-
really strong point that sports are not important. Like we've got all kinds of listeners who are state fans, Ohio State fans. This is just a fun aspect of life. We're not actually
Yeah.
that serious.
Yeah. No.
And they bring you joy sometimes and don't
A lot
bring
of
you joy.
sorrow.
A lot of sorrow.
They don't
So-
bring us, let's just say they don't bring us the kind of joy that we talked about
Sunday.
on
Yeah.
Sunday.
Yes, yeah.
Sustainable,
Exactly.
predictable.
Predictable.
It's the roller coaster ride
Resistant.
of, yeah, we don't have any of that joy. with
Resilient.
sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Resilient, exactly.
which actually, so your daughter sent me a awesome video the other day from the president and CEO of NVIDIA. Do you know that company?
Yes, I've heard of the company.
Yeah. No, I
Yes.
didn't know anything about it. Supposedly it's a huge company, AI, all this stuff. But he was speaking to a bunch of Stanford students. And this will get back to joy, I promise. And he said one of the things about people with high expectations about life, and he said, you guys should have high expectations. You guys are the top of top of your class. You're excellent at everything that you do. I mean, you're here at one of the greatest academic institutions in America. You should have high expectations about your life. But one of the things about people with high expectations is that they have low resilience. And he said, the only way that I know how to develop resilience, or how people develop resilience, is through pain and suffering. So he says, at my company, I talk about how I don't need the most competent and intelligent individuals. I need people with high character, but the only way that people develop high character is through suffering.
Yeah.
And
must have
so
been reading the Bible, right?
Oh, I know.
Yeah, for
I'm
sure.
sitting
Yeah.
there.
James.
So
yeah.
obviously, and you talked about this on Sunday, our joy is not dependent on our circumstances, but I can't tell you the amount of times that I've just expected to wake up despite my circumstances and feel a certain way. So how is joy, I guess, different than our feelings?
Yeah, well, I think that's a really important point, because I think the expectation of us as Christians is that joy, first and foremost, is an emotion. It's how I feel. Well, biblical joy has the emotion component, but at the base of it, it's not really emotional. It's really a choice to bask in the goodness of God as you enjoy the privileges of your relationship with him. And when you make that choice, periodically, it becomes an emotional joy. But periodically, God leads you through the storms, right? I mean, do we really think that God wanted us to feel happy about getting a phone call from the doctor that I've got stage 4 cancer in my brain? I mean, that is, all of a sudden, God doesn't make any sense then if he wants me to feel joy, right? But there is that deep down something, that soul satisfaction that true biblical joy can bring in a moment like that. It's that, so we're going to talk about that Sunday. It's that sense of well-being that I have in my relationship with God. And then periodically it will pop up like emotional joy. I was thinking driving in for this time on this blog, I was thinking, that periodically we do experience emotional joy. And I think about singing worship songs on Sunday, right? And I remember several weeks ago we sang this song on the worthiness of God. And I had tears in my eyes. I'm like, oh, it was so wonderful. I get in the car and I get out on 196, and this guy cuts me off. All of a sudden, I'm in road rage, right? So it's not sustainable. As it pops up, and what I like about that is when the emotional part does pop up, it's kind of like a taste of joy in eternity, because in eternity, we will always have this wonderful joy in the presence of Christ. And so, I got a little taste of eternity this morning in church, but I shouldn't expect it to last when you're tempted to flip the guy off on the highway. I'm never tempted to do that, but there are some people who are.
You just do it.
I'm not
tempted.
I have the impulse, and then I just flip them off. But that's a really good point to make, though, because especially in a society that is, I don't know, filling our minds with this idea that we are our feelings in a lot of senses, then it's hard to divorce sometimes our theology from the cultural moment that we're swimming in constantly. We're getting inundated with these ideas, and so I found myself discouraged when I'm not feeling that sense of joy. So how do we, I guess, live with that joy that is predictable?
Well, were you there Sunday?
Yeah, but I'm trying to lob you one.
Right.
You asked for softballs.
Yeah,
exactly. Well,
that's a good. That's a great question.
Yeah.
Because I think it, have you confessed your sins? Have you read your Bible today? Have you prayed? Like, I think it's easy for us to, now we're talking about joy, so now how do I manufacture it spiritually?
So how you live with it is don't expect it. Don't expect your joy to always be a feeling. Not biblical joy.
Yes.
Now, thank the Lord, we do get to have those feelings of joy periodically, right? But as we learned Sunday, that biblical joy is really that choice that I make to bask in his goodness and enjoy the privileges of my relationship with him. And I can do that even when I don't feel good. In fact, actually, if life goes south on me, that's the most important time for me to make the choice to bask in his goodness. And this coming Sunday, we're going to talk a lot about what it means to bask in his goodness and to enjoy the privileges of my relationship with him.
But I love where you started on Sunday with creation, because it's encouraging to me that God has baked this into my DNA, that my design
so important. We're built for this.
Exactly.
We're so built for this. I was hoping to make that. I wanted to preach my whole message on that. Like, it's kind of like, and I was trying all week long trying to think of an illustration, right? Tryg, what guys like you and me do when we preach. I got to have something to bring that home, and you don't really get it. But if you get,
I'm glad you struggle as well.
So maybe it's like this, I drive this wonderful car. It's built to go fast. It's built for everything. And when I'm using it for how it's built for, there's great joy. And then when I try to use it as a bulldozer, that's a problem. And I think a lot of times we try to, live our lives in ways that we're not built for. And then it's like a bulldozer, kind of. And so this whole thing of all of this, what is the source of my joy? It is my relationship with God and finding my joy in Him. I mentioned this Sunday. I don't know if I did in the second service or not, but it's the discipline of vertical living.
Ooh.
When you live in a horizontal, you're going to lose the joy. There'll be all kinds of joy killers in the horizontal.
When you have no control over.
And you have no control over it, right?
It's not predictable at all.
Yeah, right. Definitely. And non-sustainable, and certainly doesn't make you resilient in the times of trial. So that discipline of living vertically, like I'm always seeking the source of my joy from my relationship to Him. And that's not something mystical. It's the benefits of my relationship. Like I go to Him and I find that He protects me in a time of trouble. I go to Him and I find that His presence is with me even in the times of trouble. All those things, those are joy triggers, right? And all those, and like I said Sunday, some people feel like no one's ever going to forgive me for this. But God has forgiven me. And that triggers a sense of joy in my heart, So anyway, I think I don't need to keep talking about that.
That's great. I'm thinking about
Well, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking about the season of life that you and Jen have walked through the last 6 months, and I'm just curious. I mean, if you want to talk about it,
definitely.
Like how this stuff is hitting you in light of that.
Yeah, I think. You really taught so the season that Tryg's referring to is, I was in a position to where I was doing great work in a company that was successful, and I just wasn't finding fulfillment in what I was doing. And so it was an opportunity, I think, for me. There were some shifts and changes happening within the company, and I just decided I don't think I want to be a part of these changes and shifts. So I kind of said, I'm leaving. I don't have a job.
Wow. That was bold.
Yeah. Oh, big time. And for me, I want to.
How was Jen with that? Like, hey, we got bills to pay.
Yeah,
bro.
Jen was amazing.
She is
just amazing through the whole process. And Crossroads has been awesome. Just being supportive and allowing opportunities for Jen and I to connect with individuals or couples. But I think going back to that kind of before you mentioned that horizontal living, like that's kind of where I was at. It's like, for me, it's like, I come from a family of athletics and just trying to just succeed and show someone, I can do this, I can do this, just performance driven. And that is that horizontal living. Like if you're not successful, you're just going to move to the very next thing to the right or to the left. Oh, I think I can do this. Oh, I can't do that. Moving on. Nope, moving on. It's like the car reference, like, I had awesome car. Well, this car's not working. I'm going to buy a new one. It's just, I'm going to buy in hopes that this next one will be the bulldozer. It's not the bulldozer. I'm going to buy another one. And we do that with relationships. We do that with material things, like just that horizontal is a great way to put that. And I think that's where I was at professionally. And I think I wanted to get to a place where I'm like, no, it doesn't matter what I'm doing for the people that I'm working with or for. It's, how do I just make this shift to horizontal to vertical?
Yeah, that pivot is really important. That's so. How did you make this shift? Like, what happened?
Well, a big part of that, it didn't just happen overnight. I think this thought in my head of I want to, this fulfillment. We had an opportunity to go to Israel this past summer with Rod and Libby, and it was a marriage-focused trip as well. And we were, when you're in Israel, the first 3 or 4 days, you're up at, I don't know, the time difference. We were up at 2 a.m.
Brutal.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Brutal.
And so Jen and I were like, and at some point you're kind of like, well, might as well hang out with each other because we're both awake, and
just waiting to go on a 12-mile hike.
Let's just fill up our water bottles. We've done
You're
that.
making it sound terrible.
Yeah, no.
It's great.
But then Rod teaches, and that wakes you up.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
Wow, this
exactly.
is fab.
And we were, there's, because it was marriage focused, there's a lot of time to just connect, personally, do some journal. I remember I wrote in my journal, I think one of the questions was around where do you see yourself personally in the next 1 to 2 years or 3 years. I don't remember the exact question. I wrote down back in ministry work. And I think I spent 15 years professionally working in ministry before kind of leaving that. And I feel like I worked at Spring Hill camps. So it's, right out of college, didn't expect to work at Spring Hill out of college. It wasn't my background of ministry and in college or anything, but just happened to be there. Met Jen there. Great ministry, great mission. And that to me is where I'm like, my fulfillment is coming from, serving Christ and my vocation and what I'm doing and kind of mixing that worship and work.
Wow.
There was times where it was healthy. There was times where it was unhealthy. And that was one of the reasons that took me out of it. But then I think just spending time away from it, getting reconnected vertically kind of allowed me to kind of just, when we were in Israel, I'm like, I think it's time to be back in ministry. Like, I feel like I know how to do this in a healthy way. I know there's people around me who can hold me accountable, who I can, connect with, reach out, who can support, like if there's a path that I'm going down that's not healthy, that gets into that horizontal living. I feel like we're set up as a couple, as a family to do that well.
That's cool.
And so I think, I wrote that down back in ministry, and then
good.
I think opportunities presented themselves sooner than 1 year to 3 years. And so I think I was out of work for 2.5 months. And it was, I was able to be pretty selective and just figure out what I wanted to do. There's
like a sabbatical, huh?
Yeah.
Come up for air and
and
come up for air and feel the joy.
Yeah. And so, but it was good. It was a good opportunity. And I think lived in that horizontal world for so long that it's like, you're just, it's like an addiction in some ways. Like you're just this is not working. I'm moving on to the next thing. And some people, it just manifests in different ways.
That's awesome though, Tony. You took it takes guts to be like, this isn't a place for me, and to just bail without a life raft is gutsy. And speaking of you saying it's not working, do you remember the, like you just said, I was just looking at it and thinking, this is not working. Do you remember your illustration of it's not working?
At the football
games where the lady stands out and says, it's not working. This is hilarious.
I love that, by the way.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And you want to shout that at God, don't you? Like, hey, God, this is not working, right?
Yeah.
You want to shout
that's
same
for
thing.
real.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to get better because I got a text yesterday from my neighbor.
Which one?
We raised our kids together.
Is she the one I've met?
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah.
Her name's Corinne Brenner. Corinne, if you listen, shout out to Corinne. She goes, I just listened to your dad's sermon, because they come to Crossroads sometimes, but she listened and she's like, I think I'm that lady. Was I that lady that stood up, was yelling, it's not working?
And she was.
She was. Yeah. I said, yep, that's definitely you. She came over last night and she was laughing her head off. She's like, I love it. I made it into the sermon. She's like, it was true. It wasn't working. And we do want to shout that at God sometimes. Like, it's just not this plan, the playbook that we're living according to, it feels like it's not working.
Yeah.
Well, and when you were talking about that on Sunday, something that came into my head was like, how awesome for that person to actually be the one to stand up and say it's not working. Like, how do we get people in our lives that know us, that love us, that can be Tony. Like, hey, Tryg, that's not working. Like what you're doing is not working.
Telling ourselves that, whoa, there's something wrong here, to be transparent with yourself instead of doing fairyland Christianity, like everything's okay. It's not okay, but it is okay, like, you can't do fairyland. You have to be real about it. And this isn't working. So then you dig and find out, well, hey, I got this whole, I think in a sense that it relates to this whole joy thing. You were talking about living in a horizontal. If you live in a horizontal, you will judge God by the horizontal stuff. If you live vertically, you will judge and discern all of your horizontalness by him.
Yeah.
By all you know about him and how he responds and who he is. And that's one of the deep sources, one of the privileges of living in the goodness of God.
Totally.
Is to let him define your horizontal and let him be the commentator on your horizontal.
Yeah, that's a great, and to add even to that, I feel like you judge and you blame God.
Yeah, well, when
Like
you judge him according to the horizontal, you do blame him.
Yeah, like
right?
you're blaming this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
like,
your fault.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm out of here.
Yeah.
You know, but a lot of times you think I'm out of here, but you don't want to really get out of here because you're a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is you bail inside. You don't bail totally. You just bail inside.
What do you mean?
As a Christian? You know, your spirit, your heart.
Yeah.
You're not. I'm in this, but I'm not really in this anymore. You know, and then you really go horizontal, and then the joy killers are just like devastating as you do that.
I think one time, Dad, you can elaborate on this, but you taught when you were in Israel, you gave a talk a little bit on this horizontal versus vertical within the life of David and Saul. Elaborate.
Yeah, at the slaying of the
Yeah.
So obviously Saul, who should have been the spiritual leader, right, and been vertical, you know, was scared to death about the giant. Like, we're done, and here comes this little kid along, you know, like this kid, and he goes like, whoa, what do you guys, and he gives his testimony, we are people of the Lord God, right? So perfect illustration. You know, he was so vertical, like my God's bigger than this giant, right? And I think one of the underlying, if we can kind of like go off to the side here, that I've discovered in Rod's teaching and going with you to Israel is we often think he picked up these little rocks, right, and put them in, bing. But actually in ancient warfare, these, what was it he had?
Slings.
Slings in ancient warfare, they had these little rocks that were smooth, and they were skilled at they would shoot these rocks like 100 miles an hour and could hit like one of the things in ancient literature, they could hit a hairbreadth like from so far away. They were so skilled. And you think about him growing up, you know, out in the, what's he doing for sport while the sheep are eating, right? He's probably, and he was
slinging rocks.
So he was taking this skill that God had given him. It just doesn't, he hit him with the rock, you know, and a bing, you know, nailed the guy. So, but he was definitely so totally vertical.
And Saul was so horizontal because and he even tried to give horizontal tools, like take my armor, take all my stuff. And David's response is awesome. He's like, those things aren't tested in my heart. Like those things they're not a part of who I am or how God's built me or wired me or asked me to. Interestingly enough, the Bible also says about Saul and his tribe that they were the most skilled slingers, and they were able to sling with both the right and the left hand. So David comes in with a sling, and Saul's whole tribe is known for being slingers.
The Benjamites, exactly.
Yeah, and he's like, no, I'm going to take the slinging. So you just wonder what Saul thought in that moment. Like, how many times is he like, how does this kid have this, and why don't I have it? And
he actually did have it. Right?
Yeah.
But he just...
Well, I meant more like how does he have the horizontal?
Yeah, right.
I mean,
it's vertical.
Yeah, I'm sorry. How does he have the vertical perspective and I don't have it? And God keeps giving him little hints like the slinging, the armor tearing off. And it's like Saul should have recognized maybe that he needed a change in perspective. But he had joy kill. Like then he has this blame, guilt, all these things that come in.
Yeah, he had a ton of joy
and it
killers.
destroys him.
Yeah.
In the end, it destroys him.
Yeah. I remember hearing a guy preach on that passage, and he said David couldn't, David, like, he was a little kid, right? Take 2 steps forward, and his armor didn't even move, and he said, you cannot live your Christianity in someone else's armor. I thought that was so good.
That's good.
It has to be you personally. You're not hitchhiking on your parents. You're not hitchhiking on your pastor. You're not hitchhiking on the latest book you read. It's got to be you vertically with the Lord. And then in that's when the joy begins to come. And again, not only always emotional, but the joy of that deep down well-being, that everything's okay. That soul satisfaction down deep inside. We're going to talk about that some more Sunday.
What I was going to say is I think God is gracious enough. So speaking of David, to strip us of those things that we find a false sense of joy in,
right?
That inevitably fail us anyway. And I've always reflected on, in Psalm 51 where David's talking about the sacrifices that God is not pleased in. And then he says, but a broken and contrite heart you do not despise. And I just have thought about seasons in my life where I've been seeking all of my fulfillment and joy in horizontal things, only to find them completely empty, and my soul in almost a place of despair because I'm yelling at God, this isn't working, even though He's told me that it wouldn't work. And I see that in David, and the fact that you want to talk about something that's predictable and sustainable, a God who says, I'll still be faithful to you.
Exactly.
In fact, I'll use your broken heart to lead you back to myself. And so I just want to encourage people, like if you're experiencing the season of like your spirit is broken, that's actually a blessed place to be if you look back up.
Exactly. Get vertical right
Get
there.
vertical right there.
Yeah.
Like God loves that space where you're totally depleted, you're empty of everything else, and you can finally
Like what's that hand reaching down vertically from heaven to pick me up, what's then lift me up?
It's compulsive though. We do it over and over again. It's insanity. It's doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. We chase these things that.
Yeah.
So
I think too that if I can just hitchhike in the rearview mirror on its message Sunday,
do it.
What's really important is that because Satan got Eve to find her joy in the material world, right? Like, hey, look at that tree over there. If you from that tree, you could. And so I think if we're careful, I don't want any joy from the material world, because that's a problem. Because God said in Timothy, right, I've given you all good things, stuff to enjoy, right?
Exactly.
The problem with us is that we think that is then true joy. It's a happiness. It's a kick, right? It's not sustainable. It's not predictable. It's not going to help you when the trouble comes, that new car, that wonderful new car that smells so good, right? So I don't think we should feel guilty about
enjoying things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Enjoy my new car. Enjoy whatever that it is. But you cannot let that distract you from finding the true source of joy in Christ.
That's a good nuance.
Yeah, and I think that's the way it's distracting. Disobedience is disabling. It disables us from God. But just the joy of things or the happiness of things can make us feel like, well, I guess this is my source of joy. And I forgot. My source of joy is not my source of true joy. This has made me happy for a month, right? Or a day. It
wears off, like you said, the sustainability of it.
Exactly.
It will wear off.
Yep.
Reminds me of C.S. Lewis, who we love so much, but in his book, The Screw Tape Letters. And Screw Tape Letters and C.S. Lewis is this, it's Wormwood discussing with another satanic being how they're going to distract and get the Christians off track. So you get kind of like an insider insight into the strategies of Satan. In a sense, that's what C.S. Lewis is creating. And one of the chapters is, let's get them to think that it's Jesus plus something.
Right.
They fill in the blank for what's after the plus. We don't care, like the demon and Satan are talking, we don't care what the plus is. Let's just get them to think that Jesus isn't enough and they need something else, like Jesus plus the new car, Jesus plus my kid's going to the right college, Jesus plus my retirement account. Let's just get them to think that it's not enough to just focus on Jesus.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And it's not that those other things are a problem.
Right.
It's just that I think I'm going to find joy in them.
Yeah.
When you're not. You're going to only find true joy like there is no other stream.
Yes,
right, in
totally.
him.
Yeah. Well, going back to the true joy, this happened 2 days ago. Jen was putting our 8-year-old Lucy down. She's going, laying with her at night, putting her to bed. And I went out into the garage, and probably a half hour went by, and I come back in, and they come down. I'm like, why is she still up? And she's like, she's got like big news. And so for some reason, we're just like in our hallway at our house, because it's like where Max heard the rumblings of Lucy coming down. I think Sam wasn't there. So it's just the four of us. And, we all met in the hallway, and Lucy's like, I accepted Jesus into my heart. And so like, she's like, we're all like, woo, like we're happy. And Max is like, we're hugging her. And all of a sudden she's laughing. And then all of a sudden she like she starts crying.
Ah.
She's like breaking down and she's crying and she's laughing. And she's like, what is this feeling? Like, and you know, like
Hallelujah.
we're like, that is the joy of the Lord, Lou.
Amen.
Like that's what this
Ah,
is. And
that's
so I
awesome.
think when you ask me about joy, and I'm like, you know what, that is like a very, very tangible, like this 8-year-old girl accepts Jesus into her heart.
Yeah.
And this is all on her. Like, you know,
Right.
we're obviously like happy for her, we're hugging her, but she has like all these feelings and emotions. She's like, and she literally was like, what is this? Like, again, I'm like, because I like bent down to give her a hug and she's laughing, and all of a sudden I'm like, are you crying? Like, and Jen's like, yeah, she's crying. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, so it was
Yeah.
really cool to like witness that. and
That's
experience
beautiful.
that. Yeah, it was
That
awesome.
and she had the joy of the Lord.
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah.
You know, like the Westminster Catechism said, it's the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy Him
Mm-hmm.
forever. I don't think, and she was enjoying Him,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know, like, and what the Nehemiah said, the strength of the Lord, or the joy of the Lord is my strength, you know. So this thing of enjoying the privileges of my relation, you know, it's something a lot of Christians never get there, you know, and it's no wonder they're all messed
Yeah.
up with what is joy and why
Yeah.
don't I feel joy?
Well, and that's
So-
why I love that you started with design, like, and that what it actually means to live in, or to be made in the image of God,
Right.
because the design actually matters.
It
Yeah.
does.
Because if you're not functioning in your design,
Yeah.
you can't actually experience joy. So I think you added to your definition of joy by saying that we enjoy the goodness of God as we flourish in unhindered companionship with God. I think you said
Yeah.
exercising rule over the stunning beauty of His world. Like, there's actually things for us to do
Yeah.
to experience joy,
Yeah.
and that's
Good point.
being an order bringer to this world. I just think about the simple joy sometimes when I feel like life is chaotic. If I go and clean my room, you get that feeling sometimes where it's like, okay, now you can do that from a place of like, I need to just grasp for control right now. But there's also like, if my room is disordered, I feel and then, so now extrapolate that in our lives. Like, are we examining our lives? Like, we look at our room and say, hey, have we put the things in the right place?
Yeah.
And things are out of place. And maybe that's why I'm not experiencing joy right now. I'm not living in obedience. I'm not.
Yeah, dude, that's my last message in this series. Actually, that's the important part. It's like cleaning my garage. You know, I think God gave us garages.
I love it.
For like to put. I have no clue what to do with this stuff. It's in the garage. Just throw it in the garage. And then finally you drive in your garage one day, go like, this is a mess. And so you spend all day Saturday cleaning it up. You just want to leave the door open for all the neighbors to
Yep.
see how it's exactly right. The disorder of our lives, which is part of those joy killers, I think, that come into our lives, and getting everything straight. It's Psalm 1, actually. The word blessed. We're going to talk about that a week from Sunday. The word blessed literally means that straightness of my life, that orderliness of my life. Wow. Do you want to you could actually you could do a week from Sunday.
No, you just set it up. I mean, it's amazing. You set
Yeah.
it up on Sunday where I thought, okay, well, my mind immediately went to that room illustration. I'm like, I actually think this is because God designed me to be a being of order, as He is a being of order.
Yeah.
And so,
True.
no wonder I feel a certain way. Now I can, like I said, we can find our ultimate or we can try to find our ultimate fulfillment in having a clean room. That's not the point, but it does reveal something about our design.
Yeah.
And I just,
Well, I think what it
Yeah.
reveals, which is it's so interesting to hear you talk like that. It reveals like when I by obedience, get in God's lane.
yeah.
That's where order is.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why Jesus said, you know, obey me that you may know the fullness of my joy in John 15, I think. So it's that's what cleans my life up, is obedience. That's what puts everything in order, because then I am in sync with my design, because He is in order and my life is in order. So I get in His lane, and
Yeah, I was just thinking that discipline required, like for your room or your garage, if you just put it away the first, like where it goes the first time, instead of just like, I'll just throw it here. You do that 20 times. Now you have to like go back and clean and
Wait, is that how that
reorganize.
works?
Yes. But again, so exactly what you're saying, like if we're living in these obedient, disciplined lives where the right things are happening, we're doing the right things the right way, we don't have this disorganizational feelings.
That's so true.
That we have to go back and clean house.
Well,
or
let's keep going with the illustration.
My
because
garage is dirty right now, guys, so this is making me depressed.
But talk about.
I need to sweep it out.
That's your second point.
I'm not talking about my
sustainability.
metaphorical garage. I'm talking
You're
about
talking
my
about your
actual
legitimate
garage.
It's
Yes,
filthy. It's disgusting.
yes, it is. It's bad.
Like you can't park both cars in your garage.
No, we can.
But that's sustainable, right? Because and think about how exhausting it is when you've just been like tossing the stuff on the ground for a few weeks, and now it's like, okay, this is going to take me an hour. But as my wife tells me, if you just put the shirt back on the hanger right now, and then you do that 20 more times with
Dude, are you still in training?
Oh yeah, big
Me
time.
too.
Every
Big time.
man is
I
in
am
wife
too.
training.
Like I still didn't get the certificate.
Big
Have
time.
you gotten a certificate?
She calls
yet?
it the rapture because it just like
That's funny. Yeah.
looks like my body was
Where'd the
just
bodies
taken.
go?
Yeah,
Yeah,
where'd
just-
the bodies go?
So
Well-
I don't want to wear this thought out,
Yes,
but I thought that was an interesting observation that if you habitually stay in the lane, you have the constant. So in our house, my office is upstairs. And so if I get something in the mail that I want to take to my office, I just throw it on the stairs. And so because someday I'll take it upstairs, right? And pretty soon there's a whole stack of stuff, and Marty's going like, "This so." So I take it up and I throw it on my desk, and then my desk, and then I have to put it.
Yeah.
But about 6 months ago, I said, I am going to. It's a good wellness program to climb the stairs. I am never going to put anything on those stairs, and I'm going to take them up, and I'm not going to put them on my desk. I'm going to put them where they go. And the joy. Here's the joy. Just last week, I said to Marty, "Hey, did you notice that I never put anything on the stairs anymore?" She said, "Yeah, I did notice that." But
Got a
it's
certificate.
that's like the discipline, right?
Yeah.
Like keep the junk out.
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember you used to say when we were growing up, a place for everything and everything in its place.
Oh yeah, right. Exactly.
I'm kind of good at that. But all this conversation is making me think of this quote by Martin Luther where he says, "What will you do with the mundane days of faithfulness?" So sometimes I think we wait for like some grand event. Like there's more to life than hanging my clothes up after I take, we think that's just a small thing.
Totally.
But that's mundane faithfulness. Like there's no audience. It's who you are when no one's looking. And I think to go back to David, when he was a shepherd boy, so many mundane days of faithfulness. I mean, if you know anything about the ancient world, the shepherds were the lowest on the totem pole. It was usually the youngest child in the house. This is like, just go take care of the sheep. So you're just out there among the sheep. And he's slinging rocks, like we know, because he says that he did that and that he had some great moments of killing a bear or a lion. But how many mornings did he wake up and say, "This again? Like, I'm just out here with the sheep, slinging the 150th rock." He never woke up in the morning probably and said, "I need to sling rocks today because in a couple years, I'm going to be facing a giant and I'm going to have to know how to sling rocks." He just was faithful and right where God, the room that God had him in. Like I wasn't thinking, I'll clean. Because I remember thinking this, like someday when I have my own house, I'll keep my house clean. I'm a teenager room and like, I won't always be like this. I'll be clean and be on top of things. But really, it's those mundane choices of faithfulness right where God has us, because we don't know what he's preparing us for.
That's
we don't
hard.
know what's next.
It's hard though.
And I think even especially like moms at home, sometimes like these mundane days of faithfulness, like you don't know what you're doing that's going to build into your child, like what they're going to grow up to be, what things they're going to remember. You're constantly, if you're a mom or a dad or at home or wherever you are at work, you are constantly creating culture. You are a culture creator. And so what you're doing might feel mundane, but you have no idea what God's prepared for you, what's God preparing in the people around you, what kind of influence you're having, because he's the author, right? He's the ultimate chess piece mover. And so I think just those mundane days of faithfulness, of picking like your clothes up and putting things in the right place, like it feels so monotonous and meaningless. But I think that's a lie.
Yeah. And you're building a foundation.
Yeah.
Like it's foundational and it's purposeful. And I think that's those mundane things, like, as an athlete, you're like, those are the little things that you do constantly that are going to obviously, build into your craft, I guess.
And we also know what David was doing. He was writing the Psalms and developing a vertical relationship with the Lord, and he's in the middle of this meaningless task. I mean, he's using his time to go vertical. He's using his time to do what God's asked him to do right then really well. So sometimes I think we just wait for the next big thing when we're just the rhythmic passing of time that just like lulls us into these patterns that is just a waste. Like we have opportunity to go vertical. We think it's a
waste.
Yeah, not a waste. Yeah, exactly. Routine faithfulness, right? And the joy then in the end when you see what all that routine, seemingly meaningless, just chore-ish, my life is such a chore, that at the end what God did with that, and to trust that he's going to use that in a great way, just routine faithfulness. That's a really good point.
And now we're back at the rowboat.
We
get to look back and see that God was in it all along. Yeah.
That does really give you fortitude, but it actually requires that we reflect. And I think this is the danger in my own life, is that I'm often going so fast moving forward that I never take the time to look back. And that often leaves me weak for the present. Because
that's a faith builder. Looking back is a faith builder. Look what he did there. Look what he did. I got to remember what he did there.
Exactly. But if I'm not looking back, then in the present, if my circumstances are a little bit rocky and the waves grow, I'm like, are you going to show, are you faithful?
Yeah.
I know intellectually you are, but when you can look back on historical evidence in your own life.
Exactly right.
All of a sudden that gives you a fortitude, that gives you a sustainability.
Yeah.
Well, so how do you look the rowboat concept? How would you differentiate or, explain when someone who's constantly living in the past versus kind of going and using this rowboat mentality? How would you differentiate that? Because I know I know lots of people, I'm sure we all do, that just constantly live in the past.
Yeah.
They're like, well, I'm not doing that because in the past, that didn't work that way, or that wasn't successul, or
that's a good point.
That brought me no joy.
Yeah. I obeyed God, and look what happened.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people, we have that disposition at times.
And I'm not disagreing with
this.
The
isn't
rowboat.
working, God. You told me to be obedient. I've done these things, and
it's like the disciples
guy over here. It's all I know. I've never heard it before. I think that's awesome.
No, and I do think a lot of times even we spent another, like you said, you could look at your past and cause that you could have doubt over your past. You can also spend your whole life looking at your past in like a therapeutic model type way of all these bad things that have always happened to me. So you spend your whole life. The key to the rowboat metaphor, and I'm sure it falls apart in many ways, is that the whole point is you're moving forward. You're looking back, but you're not going to stop rowing. You're not going to stay stagnant and just look back. You're using the past to propel you forward.
Yeah, so if you go back, like what you said, I obeyed you and look what happened, right? So Jesus says to the disciples, get in the boat and go to the other side of the sea, right? And he falls asleep. They're obedient, right? And he's at such peace, they're going it's all cool. And then this life-threatening storm comes up because God wanted actually to lead them into a storm where he could show himself strong and build their faith. And I think that's true in life sometimes. We obey him, and I lose my job because I obeyed him. And then, in retrospect, looking back, now I can see why I had to lose my job because of what he did in my life, or how he gave me a different, whatever. Yeah, so.
No, that's good. I was just thinking through.
Sometimes you have to row for a while, though, before you see.
Oh, definitely.
There's definitely a sense of where you just have to operate on faith sometimes and keep going forward. I love the verse in that story you just talked about, Dad, where the disciples, because he falls asleep and then the storm comes, and I love their response. They say something like, "Who is this?"
Yeah, that
even the wind and the waves obey him.
Yeah, right. So cool.
It's one of my favorite verses.
Yeah.
So I got a question for you. What do you think? how do you think we discern, in Romans when Paul says that for those that are called according to his purpose, God works all things out for good? Because you talked about goodness on Sunday.
Is that joy?
We're going to talk about goodness a lot this coming Sunday.
How do you differentiate the two? I mean, like, are they goodness? Goodness and joy, and I can experience something good, but not necessarily have joy in it. Other times, I have something good, and I do experience joy in it. But when God creates the world, He creates it to be good.
And then the fall, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Wrecked everything. So it's a whole new environment.
But we still experience good things.
Well, I think that if you really believe that God has the power to flip what is bad to good, there is that sense of deep wellness in your soul. Okay, I'm in the midst of this horrible mess, right? But I do believe right now, and this is what it means to go vertically and enjoy the privileges of my relationship to Him, because I can know in my relationship to Him that ultimately He's going to flip this nasty world, this nasty experience into something that's ultimately good. And that suddenly I take a deep breath, and there's that sense of well-being, like ultimately He will make this into what is good. I mean, look at the cross. I mean, if you doubt that God's ability to take your problem and turn it to ultimate good, if you look at the cross.
Yeah, we do overcomplicate it theologically sometimes.
Yeah, we do.
We're wait, the answer's Jesus.
Like we sit here, hell canceled and heaven gained because God stepped into the worst thing that ever happened on this planet, where the Creator God was killed like a criminal. And He flipped it to what is good. Think about Joseph when his brothers came. You meant this for evil, but God meant it for good. He is the flipper of bad things to ultimately be good things. And even if I'm not to that good thing yet, and I'm still in the, the valley, in the in-between, knowing that is what gives me the joy of.
Yeah, it's a guarantee. It's a promise.
Yeah, and so suddenly there's this deep sense of wellness in my soul that ultimately it's going to be okay as tears stream down my cheeks.
I think some of it, Dad, don't you think has to do with expectations too? Because I remember this other sermon illustration that you've given before. If my expectation is that my life is perfect and that my kids are always healthy and that I'm always financially stable and that no one around me is struggling, then you're going to have your joy rocked.
Yeah, absolutely.
If your expectation is that God would be made famous and that God would be glorified, then that joy, that expectation won't ever mess with your joy, because you won't be looking again horizontally at all these things that you thought were going to make up a great life for you. If you go vertical and just like, my expectation today is that God would be glorified in me, then
no matter what,
no matter what,
even if it's through suffering. Yeah.
Talk about that. Remember that illustration?
Yeah.
Say that one. Of the airport. I love it.
Do you really want the whole thing?
Yes, just give us a good version.
It's like, well, it comes out of Philippians chapter 1, where Paul's in prison. So that's a downer, right?
Yeah.
And then,
well, look at how God used it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, but if
in the moment,
it's going like, well, who shrunk my world, right? And then, secondly, most of the Roman believers don't like him. So how come people don't like me? But in both of those situations, he has joy. Because he was able to magnify Christ in both of those situations. That's why I said I only have one expectation, that wherever I am or whoever I'm with, I will live to magnify Christ. So that brought him that sense of joy because he was fulfilling his expectation. So do you want that story?
Yeah, it's a good one.
So anyway, that's when I was pastoring in Indiana. and I was supposed to speak here in Grand Rapids, interestingly enough, at a conference. And I called the travel person, and I said to the travel person, hey, I said, I need to tweet. And they said, yep, there's a little plane that starts in Indianapolis, stops in Kokomo, where I was, goes to South Bend, and ends up in Grand Rapids. I'll put you on it. I said, I need to. They said, fine. But you need to know before we actually do this ticket, it's very little plane, doesn't have a lot of instruments, and if the weather's bad, it doesn't land. Well, I'm the eternal optimist. Didn't even think about it. That morning I got up, got my suit, got in the car, and went to what we affectionately called the Kokomo International Airport. And I walk in, and in that airport, the ticket taker and the baggage guy and the air traffic controller are all the same person. Right? So I walk in, I hand my ticket to this guy, and he's filling it out, and he's doing the paperwork. Yeah, by the way, the weather's not real good today. The plane may not come down. Well, I lost all the joy there, because I have to be in Grand Rapids at 11 o'clock. I'm speaking at this conference day. So anyway, I'm all over the guy. Like, you got to get away. And then before my very eyes, he morphed into the air traffic controller. I actually watched that happen. And he starts talking to the pilot, and the pilot says, I don't think we can get this plane down. I'm going, you tell the pilot he has got to get this plane down. And I heard the plane get louder and louder, then softer and softer. The pilot said, we'll give it one more try. And I'm going like, tons all over this ticket taker, baggage guy, air traffic control. You got to get it. He said to me, people on that plane have to live. And I went, I don't care if they have to live.
I got to speak in Grand Rapids.
Yeah, right. Get this plane down, It would get louder and louder. So I heard the pilot say, we're on our way to South Bend.
Oh.
And I'm going to this guy. I said, what am I going to do? He said, you're a minister, aren't you? They had put Reverend Joseph M. Stowell on the ticket. Felt so ashamed, actually. And I picked up my bag, and I said, I remember there was a lawyer in my church who flew as a hobby and had a little plane. No coincidence. About 3 weeks ago, he said to me, if you ever want to go someplace, let me know. I'd love to fly you there. So I get on the phone. I wake the guy up, and I'm going I told him my sad story. He said, I'll meet you at Hangar 9 in 20 minutes. I'll take you there. And I'll pick up my bag. And then I caught, out of the corner of my eye, I caught the ticket, baggage, air traffic, and I did feel so ashamed because I missed an opportunity at that desk to magnify Christ. I mean, I could have told him, dude, you got to get the plane down, but you just need to know I've been walking with Jesus a lot in my life, and my life is kind of in his hands, but get the plane down if you can, but I'm just going to commit this to the Lord right now. I could have said something like that, right? And I could have walked over to him right then and said, I wanted you to know what the Lord just did for me. But I missed that opportunity. I got up that morning with one expectation, and that was to come to Grand Rapids. And that expectation was dashed. I could have woken up that morning with one expectation, that no matter where I am or who I am with, I will magnify Christ, and had the joy of having a testimony with that guy. But I had the wrong expectation, right?
So good.
Yeah, that's great.
And the magnitude of the disappointment generally correlates with the magnitude of the expectation.
Yeah, that's so true.
So,
and
so
I want to
that was a nice big expectation you had that morning, and so your magnitude of disappointment in that moment,
right?
So what would have changed that? Because
if I make it okay,
so let's we got to make an application here. So what would have changed that morning?
Okay, so I want to go back that's right out of Philippians 1, where Paul said, I have only one expectation, and that is whether I live or die, I will magnify Christ. What would change it if I got in Paul's lane and said, every morning I wake up, and I only have one expectation today, that whoever I'm with or wherever I am, I will seek to magnify Christ. And the neat thing about that is, so that's a commitment, right? That's a vertical discipline of life. So the neat thing about that is that broken expectations are what people do to me. I'm a victim of broken expectations. This is one expectation I'm fully in control of in my life, to magnify Christ. And so,
and I know that on the other side, he's going to be consistent, faithful. He never changes.
Predictable.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's rock solid too. You know that's immovable. Despite how you feel about that thing that you're putting your trust in, it ain't changing.
Yeah. And Paul had that joy in prison, and he had that joy with the Roman believers. He said, well, they don't like me, but that's okay. Christ is preached, and I'm happy about it. I rejoice in that,
Yeah.
you know. So it's a pretty important in your little handbag of Christian tricks. It's a pretty important one to have.
Because joy is just one of those things that's a mystery, kind of.
It
I
is.
think we were talking about this in one of our planning meetings, and I think it was Nate English was saying that when it happens, like when you have true joy, or if your life is ordered for a moment correctly, you can just feel like this is the sweet spot, but it's fleeting.
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
Absolutely.
It just like you can feel it, and you're like, oh, I wish this is this way forever. But then it's just like gone in a moment when you make a bad choice or your eyes get off. I mean, it just makes us long for heaven, I think, because it's so difficult to sustain.
Yeah, exactly. And joy is like some people's temperaments just lean them into joy, right? And some people's temperaments just lean them into being more somber.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's a very complex kind of a thing. And so that's why you have to really get down and say, okay, so what is biblical joy that is a part of the joy guy's life and the not so much joy guy's life, temperament-wise, that we all share in common? You know, and that's what we're trying to do in this series of 3 messages.
It's going to be great. I can't wait.
And I feel like joy is contagious. The joy that you're talking about is very contagious.
It is,
and
absolutely.
The more people that are around people that have this joy, not the feeling, but more of this,
Inner disposition.
Yeah, like people are like, oh, I want to be around this person.
Yeah, right.
Because
Exactly.
they see the good in things. Like they're obviously, they support people, they build community.
They're vertical.
Yeah. And so I think how do you want to be around people that have this joy?
Yeah, and joy is shareable, right? Paul says in Philippians chapter 2, fulfill my joy by being. So when we do certain things, it brings joy to other people's hearts too. So it's something that we get to share.
So there we go. We got to be in community for it as well.
Yeah, for sure.
When we lack it, we can almost siphon it off somebody else who's seeing reality more clearly. And oftentimes I've found in my marriage, but also in close friendships, that I can be, in a situation that I can only see through the lens of my horizontal circumstances. But someone else can see the same situation from the outside and speak truth into that and bring me to a place of joy that I am unable to get to myself.
Yeah, that's so true.
So I'm just thankful that we have one another. And so just an encouragement, if you're isolated, like here's an application at Crossroads, like we have a million ways to get connected to community and we need one another. So
that's right. And Hebrews says, I think we're going to need each other and need gathering more, all the more as we see the day approaching. And I think like the foundations of our world, the culture that we've created is so shifting. And so this joy becomes brighter in the midst of when other people are just not sure where to stand even or, where to find an anchor. This joy is going to become, I think, more and more attractive. And like you just said, Tryg, we're going to need each other more and more.
Yeah, it's 1 Peter 2:9. We talk about.
Sorry, did I say Hebrews?
No. That's
Hebrews is
right.
right.
But I'm saying, at Crossroads we talk about 1 Peter 2:9 all the time, how we priest one another.
Yeah.
And Rod will talk about this, but this is true in my own life too. Like I've walked in on a Sunday morning where I'm about to preach and I don't feel anything great
except anxiety.
And complete
only
desperation.
Preachers understand that. Like somebody says, "Are you ready to preach?" No.
Nope.
No,
you're never ready, right?
Yeah.
So, but I'll walk in here and I don't feel ready, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But then I stand to worship. We start singing, and I'll look across the room, and I'll see someone with their arms stretched wide, tears running down their face. I sense that they are in the presence of God in a way that is real and tangible, and that priests, they're priesting on behalf of me. And in that moment, I'm consumed, and all of the worries, all of the anxiety can just dissipate as we become less and he just becomes magnified. So you talk about magnifying Christ. When we actually do that, it actually has a direct correlation to the joy in our life. Like it immediately does something in my heart and even in my emotions. When Christ is magnified and I become so much less. All of a sudden, these horizontal, trivial things that seem to consume all of my energy and emotions, they dissipate.
Yeah. See, we weren't built to be big. He was built to be big, right? And every time we try to make ourselves big, we don't. When I try, if I try to persuade, say some bragging thing about me, after I do that, I always feel small. I always feel like, why did I say
why
that?
I do that?
Yeah, why? Why did I say? We weren't built to be.
Yeah.
He's built to be big, and his bigness brings us joy in our smallness of our lives.
Amen.
That's a great place to end.
Yeah.
Hey, it's been great being on this blog.
This is the best blog I've ever heard.
It's great. You're always welcome.
Thank you. I just always
Joe.
text whatever first flies through my fallen little brain. So blog went through my brain, so that's what I put down.
No, I love it. It's such a joy having you here, and
No
like
pun
I said,
intended.
No, pun intended. Any last word, Libby? Do we need to know anything for this summer? I don't know about the podcast or anything. I'm trying to think. I don't think so. Ephesians.
Lots of surprises coming your way.
Coming our way. Anyway, we
Thank
love
you,
you,
Tony.
Crossroads.
Thank you guys.
Thanks for
having
coming. That
me.
was awesome.
It's great.
Yeah,
Come
you're
anytime.
you're a joy to be around.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
Bring joy to RCA.
Yes. That's the plan.
Yeah.
That's the hope.
When you said RCA, I thought Radio Shack.
Radio Shack.
Yeah.
Which is Radio Shack even a thing anymore?
I don't know.
I don't
That's
think
a
it
good
is.
question.
Irrelevant. We love you, Crossroads. See ya.
Have a great
Yeah,
day.
Thank
Amen.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.